Hello and welcome to my video. This video is to show you some of the Christmas decorations that I made this year in my home workshop. They're all made out of wood. Most of them are turned on my wood lathe, but a couple were made with some other tools. Most of them are made out of maple or maple and walnut. There's a couple that are made out of cherry, and also a couple made out of cedar. In every case, after I've turned or finished the piece and sanded it, I applied some teak oil and then some polish. So that's kind of how they're all finished, and there's a little screw eye in the top of each one to let them be hung from a tree. So let's get started. These first two here are a couple of little Christmas trees. These are made out of maple. Those horizontal black bands on the left-hand tree, they're made by cutting a small groove in the tree shape, and then while the piece is spinning in the lathe, I hold a steel wire against it, and the friction between the wire and the wood burns a dark brown-black line into it, and is a nice way to give you a bit of an accent. So the one on the left has that kind of decorative burn mark. The other one on the right is just kind of a more of a serrated or a kind of a sawtooth shape of the tree. The next one, it's just a small kind of a acorn shape. Some of these are shapes I just sort of improvised as I was turning and didn't really come up have a plan ahead of time. Again, this one has 3 grooves in it that are accented with the burned wire. There's 4 more here as well, similar, except now these are made using a blank that's a kind of a checkerboard pattern of walnut and maple glued together. I start off with a piece about a foot long, supported in my chuck at one end and a tailstock at the other, and I turn the piece at the very right hand side by the tailstock, and when I'm just about finished, I just remove the tailstock support and finish off the tip of the item, just so that I've got to maximize the number of pieces I can get out of each blank. And here's 2 more. They're basically the same idea. These next 2 are again a kind of a shape I improvised. It's just a longer piece with 4 grooves in them, and one is got the black accents for the burned wire, and the other one does not. In this next pair here, there's a ball shape of walnut and maple, and with grooves cut with the burned wire accents, and these have pardon me, a finial or a kind of icicle thing at the bottom made out of walnut. Here's 2 more that are kind of a similar construction, but just different shapes I was experimenting with. This next group here are bells. They're made out of maple and walnut, and I did these by first drilling a hole, a 13/16 inch drill in the bell, the opening of it, and kind of turn that shape, parted it off, and then finished off the outside, then parted it off, and then I had a jam chuck that would fit inside the mouth of the bell, and I used that to hold the pieces when I finished off the top surface of the bell. So that's with these small items, that's always the challenge, is trying to figure out how to hold them and not leave any marks. This next item is a cylinder with 3 deep grooves cut with a parting tool. Again, just something I experimented with. Next is one of the more complicated ones, more from a time point of view. It's a snowman, and there's a hat made out of walnut and a body made out of maple. They're 2 separate pieces which are kind of fastened together with a dowel. These little markers for the eyes and the body, the buttons, they're from little brad things I found at the Michael's craft store. This next pair are made of cherry. They are just two layers of cherry laminated together to get a piece that was a reasonable thickness, about an inch and a quarter thick, and just two similar shapes to some of the other ones you saw earlier. These two here are made out of cedar. Had some pieces of cedar left over from my fence. I did not like turning this wood. It's very tears very easily. It's very lightweight. You can make a fairly large decoration that isn't too heavy, but it doesn't give you a very good surface finish. It has an interesting grain, but the surface is not something I'm too happy with, but some people seem to like them. This last group of three here are actually not turned on a lathe. They're made on my drill press, essentially a cube of maple. I use the Forstner drill bit to drill a hole in the center of each face until they all kind of met in the middle of the block, and then there's a little decoration item hanging from the corner then these items came from the decoration item came from Michael's craft store. And lastly, when you are making lots of small items like Christmas decorations, you end up with lots of, and from pens and things like that, you see lots of small scraps of wood that are about an inch in size, and so I make also this group of fridge magnets. They all have a rare earth magnet mounted in the bottom surface in a hole. I have a chuck that I made, a screw chuck that lets me mount the piece of wood onto the chuck, turn the outside surface, and then when that's finished, drill a hole in the bottom for the magnet, and it's a press fit into it. It works very well, and got lots of different variations in color and wood grains in that. So anyway, I hope this gives you some ideas for your own projects. All these ones are relatively easy to make, and they do not take a lot of time, and so they're pretty good for beginners, and again, people seem to like them. So hope you get some ideas from this in your own workshops, and don't forget to wear your safety goggles and safety shields. Thanks very much for listening and watching. Bye bye.